All right, cherubs, thank you for joining me for the nominally daily update on the crazy extreme body recomposition challenge. What's been happening, what's been going on, how are things tracking? Stick around and we'll give you all the answers to all of those questions. Sorry if you can hear rain in the background. It's really hammering down today here in sunny Tasman district in New Zealand. Raining as. Okay, right, let's crack on with the task at hand. Right. First of all, there is an element of people in my comments section who are, for some reason, fixated on the cold thermogenesis part of the plan that I was undertaking for the first 3 days before this challenge actually began in earnest, when I was fasting but not dry fasting. I'm not actually doing cold thermogenesis now that I have begun the dry fasting protocol. And some of you seem to think that my whole plan is cold thermogenesis for the whole thing. No. Please do keep up. Please do pay attention. Stop talking down the back of class. Get rid of that gum. Stop throwing those paper darts and pay attention, people, for goodness sake. The cold thermogenesis was in order to counteract any slowing down of my metabolism because I was fasting to some degree. And the reason I did it was because I wanted a reasonably accurate gauge on how much energy my body was using day to day. And the way I did that was to fast so as to see how much fat I lost during that fasting. Checked that I wasn't losing any significant muscle mass or anything else mass by using the relatively accurate biometric impedance scale that I've got here. Sure, it has some error of measurement, and I'll discuss that at the end of the program as well. At the moment, though, I'm quite happy that it's accurate enough for the purposes of what we're doing here. Anywho, during those 3 days, my body stripped off an amount of fat under the fasting and thermogenesis, which equated to 6,692 calories, if you'd like to think of the fat in terms of its caloric content, i.e. what heat would we get out of that fat if we removed it surgically from my body and rapidly combusted that in a bomb calorimeter? Well, the answer is 6,692, or an average daily expenditure of 2,231 calories. Okay, that's within the realms of what would seem reasonable, I would have thought, and as such I was happy to use that as kind of a baseline. That's how much energy expenditure I'm using at the level of activity that I'm at, which is basically none, by the way. I'm really doing very little exercise at all. And I'm going to continue to do exactly that, very little exercise at all throughout this challenge. However, the challenge would, if I'm going to succeed, would require me to average over 7 days of dry fasting. It would require me to average a loss of calories off my body in the form of fat, which equated to more like 8,000. Which we're told the way to lose body fat is to eat less and to move more. Okay, well, I'm doing half of that. And as such, you would expect, therefore, that my body would continue to use 2,231 calories, give or take, of nominally of energy per day. There's no reason for it to use any more than that, except for the dry fasting part of the equation. Because I'm dry fasting, my loss of water from my body through metabolic process, through sweating, through respiratory losses and sensible losses of that kind, adds up to an amount of fluid that my body loses on a daily basis. And if I'm not replacing that fluid, with exogenous fluid, then my body has to replace that fluid so that I don't become badly dehydrated and wither up and die, basically. And the way the body does that is it uses uncoupled respiration to rapidly break down fat, and that releases a bunch of metabolic water, endogenously produced water. So where is the fat going? It's going to produce water, which is not a caloric thing at all. Whoopsie daisy, calories in, calories out, people. Anyway, does it work? Well, on the first weigh-in yesterday morning, about 24 hours ago, give or take from now, I had been dry fasting since the night before when I went to bed, and therefore I'd been nominally in dry fasting for a period of about 12, 13 hours, give or take, because I slept a goodly number of hours. It was great. Okay. Anywho, what happened? I woke up and I weighed myself and I did the calculations, and here's what we got. So what happened overnight in my nominally 13 hours of not using any energy, particularly lying there sleeping? Okay. I went from 141 pounds down to 139 pounds, which is 64 kilos down to 63.1. My fat percentage went from 18.5 down to 17.8, which nominally means the amount of fat on my body went from 11.8 kilograms or 26.1 pounds down to 11.2 kilograms or 24.8 pounds, which equates to a loss of calories in the form of stored body fat off my body of 5,474 kcalories. There you go, calories in, calories out, people. It's not looking good for you, is it? Whoopsie daisy. 12 hours, and I've basically burned off twice the calories that I'd been using per day for the 3 days previous to that, in a 13-hour period of sleeping. Goodness. Anyway, this morning we repeated the process. Oh, by the way, I should mention that yesterday my urinary output dropped really quite significantly as a function of this process getting rolling, I suspect. My entire urinary output for the 24 hours yesterday was 245 milliliters. A very, very small amount of urine came out of my body yesterday. That amount of urinary output has already been exceeded today in my first visit to the little boy's room. So the process is getting rolling, the fluid is starting to roll in, and I've got more to spare and things are returning a bit to normal. My blood pressure this morning was still quite elevated, as you'd expect under those circumstances, with the cortisol and the thickening up of the blood and the lowered blood volume and all of that, the sympathetic activity involved in that. My blood pressure this morning was 140 on 90, which I realize is higher than what you'd want, and it's higher than what I've been tracking at for about a year, actually. My normal blood pressure is around about 115 over 70 to 80. So, yeah, that's elevated, but that will come down in due course. Anyway, today, let's move on to today's figures. The update for today, here it is. I woke up this morning, took my blood pressure, that's what I've just told you about. Went for a wee, that's what I've just told you about. I'll give you the total urinary output for today, tomorrow. And I did the weigh-in procedure, and here's what we get. My weight has gone from 63.1 kilograms down to 61.9, which means I've gone from 139 pounds down to 136. The percentage of fat on my body has dropped from 17.8 to 17%. Which equates to a mass of fat on my body that was 11.2 kilograms or 24.8 pounds. and it's now 10.5 kilograms or 23.2 pounds. That, my dear cherubs, equates to an amount of calories lost off my body in the last 24 hours of, get this, 6,379 calories. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Whoopsie daisy. Now, keep in mind that that caloric content is of fat specifically, as per what the biometric impedance scale is telling me is coming off as fat specifically. In terms of my water balance, the amount or percentage of my weight that is water is actually steadily going up. So on the 10th, it was 56.7%. Yesterday, it was 57%. Today, it was 57.4% of my body is fat. So the actual percentage, the wetness of my body is going up. But the weight of water has dropped from 36.29 kilograms down, or 80 pounds, down to 79.3 pounds, 35.97 kilograms, and then down again today to 35.53 kilograms of water in my body, or 78.3 pounds of it. So interesting that that's occurring. My lean mass, once you take out the water component of that, is pretty rock solid at around 15.9 kilograms or 35 pounds. So I'm not losing muscle mass at this stage. Yep. So the only thing that's changing, or the only two things that are changing, are the amount and percentage of water in my body in an inverse way to each other, and the amount of fat on my body, which is dropping, which is what I wanted. Anyway, there you go. In nominally 2 mornings of weigh-ins, so we're talking about 36 hours or so of dry fasting, we have a net caloric loss of, let's work this out just quickly, we have got 11,850 something. Just quickly doing it off the top of my head. In 36 hours. Interesting, isn't it? For those that say the solution to fat loss is eat less and move more. It seems like the actual answer might be eat less and don't drink either. However, that being said, I will repeat my caveat. Do not try dry fasting at home without adequately qualified, sensible, knowledgeable supervision, someone who can link in with you on a daily basis at least, and make sure that you have the right number of fingers and toes, count those up for you, and make sure everything is running the way it should be running. I don't want people to go and try this yourselves. The maximum that you should probably do for your first dry fast is 24 hours. If you've done a 24-hour fast and come through that okay, you could do a 3-day dry fast by yourself with some supervision. Okay, and then after that, you would look at longer periods of time if you still need to. However, I would not suggest that any of you just run off and try a 7-day dry fast like I'm doing here. That's not sensible. You don't have the training behind you. You don't have the preparation behind you. And you don't necessarily have access to knowledgeable clinician who can help you deal with any problems that might arise and tell you when you need to pull the pin if it gets to that stage. All right, so don't do this at home. Follow along, learn something from it, but don't do this without supervision anyway. And I'm happy to supervise. You can contact me at the address on screen for supervision for dry fasting if that's indicated in your case, which we'll discuss before we get started. Okay, good. All of that being said, that's the numbers. Let's talk about the experience itself. How am I feeling? It's always, and especially in the first couple of days of a dry fast, it's always nasty. It feels horrific. It's my mouth is dry and cottony. I feel woolly in the brain a little bit. I feel like a vegan must feel like most of their life, if not all of their life. It's incredible. I have intermittently. I have hunger pangs. My body's telling me it wants food for half an hour at a time here and there, and then it forgets about it. The idea of an ice cold drink of something is delightful as an idea. It's not pleasant. It's not fun. I'm putting my body through a significant stress, as indicated by, the fact that my urinary output dropped so low yesterday. My blood pressure is still up. The woolliness, I'm sure I'm coursing with cortisol, all of that. And my body is rapidly burning up stored fat off my body in order to deal with this dehydration issue or counteract it to whatever degree it's doing so. And as such, it's in a stressed situation. So it's not sustainable. This is what you would do for a challenge for a period of time to get an amount of weight off your body or an amount of fat off your body, depending on whether it's an aesthetic thing you're going for or whether it's a making weight for a contest sort of thing. By the way, if you did this to make weight, you're putting yourself at a vast disadvantage in that event because you'll arrive feeling like shit. So it doesn't make sense, does it? Okay, right. So that is your full disclosure. That is your daily update on the challenge situation so that you know what's going on. I haven't reported the output of feces during the challenge because while ever I've been dry fasting, I cleared out all the feces I imagine in my first 3 days of wet fasting, and as such, the excretion of feces so far is none. And I'll keep you up to date with that too. You're welcome. All right, see you next time, about this time tomorrow, give or take, when I'll report on what's happened over the next 24 hours. Stay in touch.